with all of these restoration projects, we either planned or intended to have a workshop for people to come and participate. And this is just a nice opportunity to add a networking, education, outreach component to your wetland restoration project. We had one of these workshops at both Kings Gap and at Gifford Pinchot. Unfortunately, at Ohio Pile, the global pandemic kind of put a kibosh on those plans. So instead, you're getting this vernal pool webinar, and we've done some other outreach activities to try and share what we've been doing and learning since we couldn't do an in-person workshop. And just to finish off the construction phase, as Joanne mentioned, at the end of the project, you want to seed and plant around your pool. You might need to wait until conditions are better in the fall, in the fall or the following spring. And you want to look for a nice mix of flowering plants and also native sedges, rushes, and grasses. For your seed mixes, you might want to consider two different kinds, one sort of developed for wetter soils and the other for drier upland soils. This is, your post-restoration plantings are a great time to bring in volunteers. We did an Earth Day event for planting and fencing native plants at the Gifford Pinchot wetland site. You can also check with local native plant nurseries or conservation groups about, donating or reducing the cost of native plants to bring in and to provide expertise and volunteers for plantings. Our master watershed steward group of York County has been helping us monitor these pools. One of the volunteers created this nice map of our wetland restoration area around this particular pool site, where we had done some plantings and protected them from deer browse with these cages. And he mapped those out and made little metal tags to mark each one, so that it made it easier for us to monitor how well the plants were doing inside those cages, and just helped us organize our notes about the plantings. So when the project, when you're done with your restoration project, that's really just the end of one phase and the beginning of another, and that's the post-restoration monitoring and management. And this period should last at least 2 to 5 years post-restoration and beyond. And it's really an opportunity to engage old and new partners and volunteers as you continue to monitor and control invasive plants and your restored wetlands. Are they doing what you hope they would do in terms of hydrology and attracting vernal pool amphibians? And a lot of this can be done with volunteers using pretty simple techniques. The challenge is that there's usually volunteers who are interested, but it's getting them organized around what you want to accomplish, and to also not overburden them with too much. So it's like striking that balance and finding some support. You're going to just continually going to need to support those efforts as they go forward. Those volunteers are going to take increasing ownership over these projects as they get trained up and get more comfortable with what you're doing and with what they're monitoring. And just providing repeated opportunities to keep people out there. They really can learn a lot about many different things, identifying plants and animals and learning about these things while they're helping you gather data about how well your restoration is doing. And even though it's ideal to have the local conservation groups or volunteers take ownership of this post-restoration monitoring, it's never truly and entirely hands-free for the people who originally envisioned this project. So we've just been really thankful that we've been able to keep working with the staff from the state parks and the resource management section to continue to help us with all aspects of the wetland monitoring and to troubleshoot some of the things that we've run into post-restoration. So we have an interesting observation that came during post-monitoring here. I'll let Joanne introduce. And I'll go ahead and play the video while she's talking.
So as I mentioned, the swimming pool that we restored already had newts these are red spotted newts in the video, using the pool. And so the population was really high. So in that spring of 2022, when we found the wood frogs, they were doing some pretty heavy duty predation on those egg masses. And so we counted around 12 newts just around one egg mass. So this was happening all over the meadow. So looks like our video's having a little trouble loading here, but it was just sort of overwhelming seeing the number of newts. And so that, you know, they kind of roll like alligators and twist a jelly off trying to get at the eggs. But we're hoping over time that'll sort of sort itself out a little bit.
Are trying to chew through the jelly to get to the egg, and they do like this roll sometimes like an alligator to try to kind of like spit it out.
We used this situation, or we hope to use a situation as a learning experience for a program that we do called ICON, which is with high school students. And we built these Ohio Pell State Park staff and PNHP, we built these little newt excluders that to test a theory. One of them, the one they're putting in the ground, excludes the newts. The other one that's off to the other side has an entrance that the newts can get in. So we were going to use it for the students to do some field research and try to get some sort of count on how heavily predated that these egg masses were. Unfortunately, again, as Betsy mentioned, due to the COVID situation, we were unable to run the program, but we did have those excluders out there long enough to know that they worked. So these kind of projects do give you opportunities, you know, for education and outreach events.
Another example of a creative add-on to a project to increase your outreach was at Kings Gap Environmental Education Center, where we have somebody who's good with woodworking built these nice kiosks to house the posters that depict the different restoration techniques, and the kiosk is right next to those pools along a hiking trail. So it's sort of like an interpretive trail now, illustrating the work that was done and important themes about vernal pool ecology and conservation. And vernal pool walks are just a nice active way to, you know, to actually lead people out there to show them and talk to them about the work that's being done to restore them and to monitor them and to recruit new volunteers. So I think we're going to cut it at that. We have some exciting new monitoring techniques coming up, utilizing citizen scientists. This is an effort to try and engage just whatever park visitors are there to take some data points for us, whether it's like photos that can be stitched into a time lapse of the pool or to record water level readings. And this is all to both engage more people on contributing data to the monitoring project and let them feel engaged and like they've contributed, while also lessening the burden on our core volunteers. We will just like to thank all the people who contributed images to these slides, these pictures, all of our project partners, and a special thanks to the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, the Bureau of Recreation and Conservation Environmental Stewardship Fund that helped fund a lot of these projects and the outreach components of them. So at this point, we have gone well over our original allotment of time. So I think if we still have people with us, maybe we can answer a couple questions. And then I think the best tactic will probably be to just put together the things that have been put into the Q&A, and we'll try to reach out, answer those questions after we recover from this webinar and get back to people with a little more thought out answers to the things you might be curious about.
Yeah, there was lots of really great questions. I don't know if I would pick any in particular. If you want to maybe we could start at the top and do like the top 3 and maybe just leave it at that. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great.
Okay. All right, I'll go ahead and just say the question, and then whoever would like to answer can answer. So we had a question from Justin. He said, unless guidance has changed or will change with delisting, I believe the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service requires 300-foot buffers on vernal pools that contain or even just have potential to contain the northeast bulrush. So he's wondering if that's in place.
I am not sure about that. I don't know if anybody else on this call knows about that, or if Jack, if you do, if you want to type it in, Jack, if you've heard anything either, or Joanne, but I'm not sure where things are at with that. I know that it was, I believe, being delisted, but I would need to get back and look into that.
Okay. And we had a question from Matt. He's asking, what is the minimum requirement time-wise in identifying a vernal pool? If it dries up within a couple days or within a month, does it not meet the requirements of a vernal pool?
The basic the basic guidelines we use for determining if something is a vernal pool is, first of all, does it support breeding of the vernal pool indicator species? And so if you can document egg masses, that's usually the easiest way to document it. And then it usually takes repeated visits to a wetland to see how long it holds water. You also want to see if it dries down significantly or dries up in late summer. So taking some pictures of the pool at its lowest point can show, yes, it's fluctuating. Because sometimes vernal pool amphibians will try to breed in habitats that aren't really the best for them, but they use them anyways because they don't have anything else around. So sometimes we have a category of wetlands we call, they're not vernal pools, but they do have vernal pool amphibian breeding in them. So putting those two components together, the wildlife that's using them, plus if it has that fluctuating hydrology, is how we decide if we're going to call it a vernal pool.
Okay, great. And then the last question, as far as what we have time for today, is from Larry. He says, or he's asking, when you mention other wetlands, do you include man-made ponds? And can we apply what you suggest to vernal ponds to our man-made ponds?
Jack, you want to take that one, or you want, at least from a permitting point of view?
Yeah, not sure exactly what Larry's asking there, but some techniques could transfer over. The one that comes to mind that we mentioned would be the bentonite clay curtain that was used. This is more for repair of a structure to make it watertight. So that construction technique could carry over to a man-made permanent water pond. But one big caveat that I'll put in there is that where we used that technique was a small spring-fed pond with hardly any drainage area, certainly no public safety or anything downstream. It wasn't an on-stream pond. So it worked well for us in that very headwater, small drainage area situation wouldn't be something we'd recommend for an on-stream dam or a larger embankment, certainly.
Great, thanks, Jack. So I think that that's going to be where we have to end our Q&A session. We will send out a link, will come out with the recording, and we will follow up with any more questions that are hanging out there in the Q&A. And again, feel free to contact me at blepo@paconserve.org. And thanks again, Jack and Joanne and Amy and all of you who joined us for your time this afternoon. We appreciate the chance to talk to you about this, and have a great rest of your afternoon.